What if I told you that the moment I needed my family most, they literally drove away and left me on the side of a highway while I was in active labor? This is the true story of how the worst day of my life became the catalyst for the most important transformation I've ever experienced. My name is Rebecca, and for 27 years, I lived as the forgotten middle child. You know that feeling when you're standing right there, but somehow you're still invisible? That was my entire childhood. Growing up between my older sister Allison and younger brother Eric felt like living in permanent shadows. Allison was everything my parents wanted: beautiful, brilliant, accomplished. She was their golden child. And honestly, I spent most of my life trying to figure out what I had done wrong to deserve so little of their attention. Picture this: it's my 10th birthday. I'm performing a solo at my school concert, something I'd practiced for months. Where are my parents? At Allison's minor dance recital, showing up to my event 2 hours late, having missed my entire performance. But the very next day, our living room is packed with people celebrating Allison's third place win at a regional science fair. Our family photo albums told the real story, page after page of Allison at competitions, ceremonies, award dinners. And there's me, usually an afterthought, often cropped out or blurry, like even the camera knew I didn't quite belong. This wasn't just childhood stuff. This pattern followed me everywhere. When I brought home straight A's, my dad would give me a brief nod before asking Allison about her latest project. When I won second place in a statewide writing competition, something I was incredibly proud of, my mom's response was literally, "That's nice, but did you hear Allison got accepted to Princeton?" Eric and I developed this silent understanding. We'd exchange these knowing looks across the dinner table, while our parents spent entire meals discussing Allison's accomplishments. Sometimes we'd sneak out for ice cream afterward, our small rebellion against being constantly overlooked. But here's what I didn't realize then. I was already starting to internalize this treatment. I began to believe that maybe I really wasn't as important. Maybe I really didn't deserve the same attention and love. College became my escape. For the first time in my life, I was judged on my own merits. I thrived academically, made genuine friendships, and slowly started rebuilding my self-confidence. That's where I met Nathan in an American literature class. He was this quiet, thoughtful guy with kind eyes that actually saw me, not as the lesser sibling, not as a disappointment, just as me. Nathan's family was everything mine wasn't. The first time I joined them for dinner, his mother asked about my interests and actually listened to my answers. His father proudly displayed a poem I'd written on their refrigerator for months. It was like discovering water after a lifetime in the desert. When Nathan proposed, after 3 years together, my parents' response was underwhelming. "Are you sure you're ready for that commitment?" my mother asked, with this unspoken comparison to Allison, who was wisely focusing on her career instead of relationships. Our wedding was beautiful, but small. Nathan's family handled most of the arrangements, while my parents contributed the absolute minimum they could, without appearing completely uninvolved. And guess who was my maid of honor? Allison. Not by my choice, but because my mother insisted it would hurt her feelings to be excluded from the spotlight. When I discovered I was pregnant, Nathan was over the moon. We spent nights talking about names, decorating the nursery, imagining our future as parents. I waited until I was past the first trimester to tell my family, knowing their reaction would probably diminish my joy. I was right. My mother's first response, "Well, I suppose it was bound to happen eventually." My father asked if this meant I'd be quitting my job. No congratulations, no excitement, just practical concerns and thinly veiled disappointment. Meanwhile, Nathan's family showered us with support. His mother organized a beautiful baby shower, his father built a crib by hand, and his sisters brought us home-cooked meals during my difficult third trimester. My parents, they sent a generic card with a modest check. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Allison had been nominated for a prestigious industry award, and the ceremony was scheduled for the weekend of my due date. Instead of acknowledging this obvious conflict, my parents immediately began making plans to attend, assuming I would just understand that this was too important to miss. When I pointed out that I was literally about to give birth, my mother actually suggested that first babies are usually late anyway, and I should join them on the 4-hour road trip to the ceremony. My doctor explicitly advised against traveling so close to my due date, but my family pressure was relentless. "You've always been jealous of Allison's success," my mother accused, when I hesitated. "This is the biggest moment of her career." Against every instinct and Nathan's concerned objections, I agreed to go. Part of me still desperately wanted their approval, still hoped that somehow being accommodating would finally make them see me. Nathan had an unavoidable work commitment, but he made me promise to call at the first sign of labor. As we packed for the trip, I never imagined how catastrophically wrong things would go. The morning started innocently enough, a beautiful June day that gave no hint of the trauma to come. Nathan helped me into the car when my parents arrived, his worry evident. "Call me if anything happens," he insisted, pressing his phone charger into my hand. From the moment we left, the dynamic was clear. Allison had the entire back seat to herself, surrounded by garment bags containing outfit options for her big moment. I was wedged into the middle row beside her luggage, my pregnant body crammed uncomfortably against the door. The irony wasn't lost on me that her clothes had more space than I did. "You look terrible," were Allison's first words to me. "Did you even try to put on makeup? The photographers will want family pictures." About 2 hours into the journey, I felt the first contraction. It wasn't painful, just a tightening sensation that made me catch my breath. I dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions, those practice contractions my doctor had mentioned. But they kept coming, every 15 minutes, then 12, then 10. I tried to breathe through them quietly, not wanting to draw attention or complaints. During a particularly sharp one, I must have made a sound, because Allison turned to me with an irritated expression. "Could you not? I'm trying to mentally prepare for my speech." By the third hour, the contractions were coming every 8 minutes, and impossible to hide. I was shifting constantly, trying to find any position that offered relief. "Rebecca, can you please sit still?" my mother snapped. "You're distracting your father from driving." "I think I might be in labor," I finally admitted. The car went silent. "That's not funny," my mother said. "I'm not joking. I've been having regular contractions for the past 2 hours. They're getting stronger and closer together." Allison immediately threw her hands up in exasperation. "Are you serious right now? This is my weekend. The ceremony is tomorrow." As if to emphasize my point, another contraction gripped me, stronger than before. I couldn't help the small moan that escaped. "Oh my God, could you be any more dramatic?" Allison rolled her eyes. "She's obviously just trying to get attention." Then it happened. My water broke. There was no denying it anymore, no dismissing it as false labor or attention-seeking. "My water just broke," I announced, mortification mixing with fear. The car swerved slightly as my father processed this information. "You need to take me to a hospital right now," I said, panic rising in my voice. My mother turned around, her face a mask of conflicted emotions. "The nearest hospital is probably back the way we came." We'd missed the reception entirely. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I'm having a baby, your grandchild." "Can't you just hold it in a little longer?" Allison asked, seemingly serious. "We could go to the ceremony and then find a hospital afterward." The absurdity of her question would have made me laugh if another contraction hadn't chosen that moment to tear through me. "For God's sake, Walter, pull over," my mother finally instructed. "She's being too loud." My father pulled onto the shoulder of a desolate highway with nothing but fields on either side. Through the haze of pain, I heard them discussing options in low, urgent voices. The contractions were relentless now, barely giving me time to recover between them. Look, my mother finally said, the ceremony venue is only an hour away. There's a hospital near there. Allison needs to be at this reception. It's crucial for networking. You can't be serious about going to a hospital now. The baby isn't coming this minute. I need a hospital now, I protested, reaching for the door handle. Instead of helping me, my father stepped out and came around to my door. For a moment, I thought he was going to take my side. Instead, he helped me out of the car and retrieved my overnight bag, setting it beside me on the gravel shoulder. There's a town a few miles that way, he said, pointing down the highway. Someone will stop and help you. You can't leave me here, I sobbed, partly from pain and partly from the shocking realization that they were actually going to abandon me. My mother leaned out the window. Don't be so dramatic, Rebecca. This is your sister's big moment, and you're trying to ruin it like you always do. She needs peace and silence to prepare. The last thing I saw as they pulled away was Allison's face in the back window, a mixture of relief and something that might have been guilt, quickly replaced by her rehearsing her acceptance speech. I stood on the side of the highway, a contraction building, as I watched my family's car disappear around a bend. I had never felt so alone or betrayed in my entire life. What happened next tested every ounce of strength I didn't know I had. I was alone on a rural highway, in active labor, with no phone and no transportation. The June sun beat down mercilessly as I dragged my suitcase toward a cluster of trees, the only shade in sight. I took inventory of what I had: clothes, toiletries, prenatal vitamins, a dead phone, a small first aid kit, a protein bar, and a bottle of water. Not exactly what you'd want for an emergency childbirth situation. The contractions were now coming every 6 minutes. I remembered my doctor saying that when they're 5 minutes apart, it's time to go to the hospital. The irony wasn't lost on me. I found the emergency birth plan my doctor had insisted I carry. At the time, it seemed like unnecessary paranoia. Now it might save our lives. Clean environment, comfortable position, sterile tools if possible. I had none of the recommended supplies, but I had to work with what I had. Cars passed occasionally, but despite my frantic waving, none stopped. I was essentially invisible, just like I'd been my whole life, except now it was literally life or death. As the sun began to set, my body took over completely. The contractions were now coming every 3 minutes, and the urge to push was overwhelming. There was no denying it anymore. This baby was coming, whether I was ready or not. I thought about my grandmother, who had told me stories of giving birth to my uncle during a blizzard when the ambulance couldn't reach their rural home. Women are stronger than they know, she had said. When the time comes, you find strength you never knew you had. I hoped she was right, because the time had definitely come. You can do this, I told myself, voicing the encouragement I desperately needed to hear. Women have been doing this forever. Your body knows what to do. And somehow, miraculously, it did. At 7:38 p.m., as the golden hour light bathed the highway, I delivered my daughter with my own hands. When I heard her first cry, that beautiful, lusty wail, tears streamed down my face. "Hello, Lily," I whispered. The name we had chosen months ago, suddenly perfect for this resilient little flower who had bloomed despite everything. "I'm your mom." We did it. As darkness fell, headlights appeared in the distance. Unlike the others, this vehicle slowed and pulled over. A woman named Miranda stepped out. She was a nurse, not an obstetrics, but she knew enough to help. Miranda didn't waste time with questions. She helped me and Lily into her truck and drove us to the nearest hospital with careful efficiency. "You both look good, all things considered," she said, "but we need to get you checked out properly." At the hospital, the medical staff was amazed. Despite the circumstances, I had managed a textbook delivery. Lily was pronounced healthy at 6 pounds, 8 ounces, with perfect scores on all her assessments. But it was the staff's reactions to my story that really drove home the magnitude of what had happened. When I explained that my parents had left me on the highway to attend my sister's awards ceremony, the shock and outrage on their faces was unmistakable. "I've been a labor and delivery nurse for 15 years, one nurse told me, and I've never heard anything like that." Nathan arrived at the hospital like a man possessed, having driven through the night when he couldn't reach any of us. When he saw Lily for the first time, his anger at my family temporarily gave way to pure wonder. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching her tiny hand. When my parents finally called, from Allison's celebration dinner, no less, their casual tone was infuriating. "How are you doing? Did you make it to a hospital?" my mother asked, as if inquiring about a minor inconvenience. "The baby came," I said flatly. "On the roadside where you left me. I delivered her myself." There was a brief silence. "What, already? But first, babies usually take so long." The disconnect was staggering. Here I was, having just survived one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, and they were at a party. But this time was different. This time, I had power. The hospital administrator had been informed of the circumstances and was deeply concerned. "Abandoning a woman in active labor constitutes criminal negligence at minimum," they explained. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards. When my family arrived at the hospital the next morning, looking fresh and rested, carrying Allison's award like a trophy, I was ready for them. "Aren't you going to introduce us to the baby?" my mother prompted. "Her name is Lily," I said evenly. "She was born on the side of Highway 16 yesterday, at approximately 7:38 p.m. She weighed 6 pounds, 8 ounces. I delivered her entirely alone, after you abandoned me in active labor." What followed was a masterclass in gaslighting and denial. They minimized, they made excuses, they even suggested I was being dramatic, their favorite word for whenever I dared to have needs or feelings. But I had recorded everything, their phone calls, this conversation, all of it. And I had a choice to make about whether to pursue criminal charges. "What do you want?" my father finally asked, his businessman instincts kicking in. My answer was simple. "I want acknowledgement, real acknowledgement of what you did and why it was wrong. I want an apology that shows you understand the harm you caused. And I want change, concrete changes in how you treat me, Nathan, and Lily." I gave them 4 hours to think about it. For once in my life, they would have to work on my timeline. What happened next was something I never thought I'd see. My parents actually listening, really listening. For the first time in my life, they heard me describe what it was like to grow up as the forgotten child, to be abandoned in my moment of greatest need, to deliver my own baby while they partied. My father wept openly, something I had never seen before. "I don't know how we convinced ourselves it was acceptable to leave you there," he admitted. "There's no excuse, none at all." Even Allison eventually acknowledged her role. "I've always been the center of attention," she said quietly. "I never thought about what that meant for you. I never considered that while I was getting everything, you were getting nothing." It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of defensiveness, of falling back into old patterns. But there was also real remorse, real recognition of the harm they had caused. We established boundaries that day, clear expectations for how we would interact moving forward. I made it explicit that Lily would never experience the favoritism that had defined my childhood. The past 2 years have been a journey of healing and growth for all of us. We've been in family therapy, working through decades of dysfunction. It hasn't been easy. Old habits die hard, and there have been setbacks along the way. But there's also been genuine progress. My parents have made real efforts to change their behavior. They've learned to celebrate my achievements without immediately pivoting to Allison. They show up for Lily in ways they never showed up for me. Allison and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship too. The therapy sessions revealed how the favoritism had damaged her as well, creating unrealistic expectations and an unhealthy need to always be the center of attention. She's actually considering a career change. From her high-pressure corporate job to teaching at a community college, I think I might like helping others succeed instead of always chasing the next achievement, she told me recently. At Lily's second birthday party last month, I watched my parents playing with their granddaughter, truly present and engaged. My mother had given me a locket with pictures of both Lily and me as a baby. I've been thinking about what you said in the hospital, she told me, about how we made you feel growing up. I found this picture of you recently, and I realized I couldn't remember much about you at this age. I was so focused on Allison that I missed so much with you and Eric. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was honest progress. Looking back on that terrifying day on the highway, I realize it was the catalyst for the most important transformation of my life. In giving birth to Lily, under those impossible circumstances, I also gave birth to a new version of myself, a version that would never again accept being treated as less than. Here's what I've learned. First, sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. That doesn't make it okay, but it does make it human. Second, you can't change other people, but you can change how you respond to them. Setting boundaries isn't mean. It's necessary for your own mental health and well-being. Third, breaking generational cycles is hard work, but it's some of the most important work you'll ever do. The patterns that shaped my childhood don't have to shape Lily's. And finally, sometimes our greatest strengths emerge from our darkest moments. I never knew I had the courage to deliver my own baby or to stand up to my family until I was forced to do both. The road ahead isn't always easy, but it's filled with possibility when you have the courage to demand the love and respect you deserve. Lily is now a thriving 2-year-old who will grow up knowing her value is intrinsic and unconditional. She'll never question whether she matters, because she'll always know she does. That cycle is broken. The healing has begun. And while the scars remain, they're reminders of how far we've all come.